Good afternoon. So I've been threatening to do the FX results for a while, not getting around to it. So here I am, finally getting around to it. Um, it's just like this. This I normally do just the results every couple of months, just to see what's happened on the alerts, and try and at least learn something from what's working and what's not working. I don't even know how many people are using the alerts. I haven't been trading this much myself lately, but I still throw the alerts in because I like keeping an eye on what's going on. So I think I've lost some accuracy through not trading it myself, because if you follow me, then you know most people know that I use a lot of confluence in my trading. So while I can throw alerts in saying I expect reactions at particular levels, if the confluence isn't there, I certainly won't be trading that level. Good afternoon. So I'm just adding a quick intro onto this video because I realised when I got to the end of having finished recording this video already that I hadn't really explained why I'm doing this or what I'm doing. So just a quick intro. This is a results video. I set alerts on all my charts on TradingView, my FX charts. This video is related to, and also on crypto as well. The FX alerts all go into a free Telegram channel, which you'll find in the description of this video. So you can then, nothing should be traded blindly, but if you understand the way I trade and you understand supply and demand to some extent, they're just giving you ideas of the levels or zones when they're hit that you can look for short or long entries. So if something says, hitting, this is the Euro chart, hitting 2-week supply, alert will go here saying hitting 2-week supply, and then you look at the lower time frames to see if there's something tradable. I expect you to have done your own analysis. I expect you to be aware of confluence of the charts because, sometimes I'm more or less across them. I haven't been that across them in the last couple of months. And, so sometimes the alerts, so I would say, probably 70 or 80% of the alerts will give some sort of a reaction. But it depending on what the market's doing, and recently, they've been much more sort of scalp kind of reactions like this. In this case, didn't even get down to the next demand. And you have to know whether you're taking a big trade or a small trade, and how you're using the alerts. That's up to you to work out. It's up to you to have an understanding of the higher time frame of the chart to know what the probabilities are. But either way, so yeah, everything goes onto my FX analysis Telegram channel and onto Twitter, so you can use those and then decide if you want to take some of these trades. So this video that I do every 2 or 3 months is to go through the results so I can hide all these damn crosses where the alerts are on my charts, and then to have some general discussion of what I think the market's doing and what the structures are doing. So I think that's about it, but yeah. So feel free to follow my Telegram channel if you want to get access to these alerts, or to all my Twitter. And yeah, and then also I have chats there, 2 crosses there. I have chats attached to that, so you can ask me any questions you want. Yeah, so I hope that's useful. So then we'll just move on to the dollar to start with. Issue. So this month's been, the last 2 months been not too bad. I think we had a brief period at the start of April when the dollar crashed, which obviously then obliterated some alerts, and we had some messing around and stop hunting and strong moves and things like that. And then the other issue has been weak demand. We'll see weak demand here on the dollar. So, and that, where you normally expect a bounce, even if it's weak demand. I don't know what that error is doing there. When you normally expect a bounce, even if it's weak demand, in this case, we didn't get one. So what we had here on the dollar was that an annual demand was created when we had the green, the red, and then the green close of 2024. But then when this 2025 candles come back down, we barely got any bounce off the top there. You would normally expect, a bounce either off the top or somewhere in the zone. And I think we got a little bit, but very, very little in the grand scheme. And it's the reason I say it's weak is because while it's closed strongly over the red candle, it hasn't closed over this high. So essentially, this is still a range within that last up move. So hence weak demand, and therefore we haven't got a reaction off it. But normally we do expect a reaction, in contrast, for example, here, we had a green, red, green. The what's that 1999 candle closed above the red candle. In fact, not even significantly above. It just wicked above, so essentially closes a swing failure. But then the next candle was that year 2000, opened higher, just tapped down off the top of that, and then took off. So that's what could have happened here, regardless of that wick. But this is this was still a weak demand, and it was still underneath previous structure. But obviously this is a very different structure as to now. Yeah, so at the start of April that caused some problems, and I think the other issue was even here there was a 3-month demand, again weak. Actually wasn't that weak up there, potentially could have got another up move even if it hadn't taken out the high, but again very little bounce off there. And yeah, not much on the monthly or anything else. So as you can see, we've sort of come straight back down through this zone. So that caused some of the alerts to get obliterated. So what we've also had in here, we've never hit this weekly demand on these wicks, and that was always my bigger concern. And then obviously we made this large sort of broadening wedge type thing. This bottom line's a bit dubious, but that line's a bit cleaner. Came back up, a clear corrective move after this impulse back up into supply for what's now a broadening wedge and a C wave. So we have an A, B, C wave that's taken out the lower B into a zigzag rather than a triangle. And again, like with hindsight, it looks, I did have the wedge drawn in a while ago, but I still look back at this and think, that I would have expected, some sort of a bounce on this annual zone in here, even if that was the outcome. But yeah, so as you can see here, we've got very little bounce there. I'm not sure if that was the 3-month higher up there, but very little bounce in there. But again, yeah, like I say, when I look back at it, I can say, well, we actually hadn't ever got to demand, and it's tough because, I've been front run here. I had alerts, or not alerts, but even just thoughts of trading, that was shorting the euro when the dollar got to here. Similarly under there, again, it never made it down to the zone. So I guess it doesn't really surprise me it's come down now. And then obviously, because now it's taken this long to come down, it's made a lot of supply above and thus has barely got any bounce even when it has finally made it to the zone. And now everything's come through the zone. So let me have a look at what we have here. So we've got the 6-month close coming up. So that's kind of going to be interesting. So again, at the moment, we are going to close below this consolidation. And we do have, 13 days left. So we might get some change between now and then. It can very easily recover in 13 days if something major happens. But then also, as I said, so we've kind of broken that weekly zone that I wanted, but we've now got an annual zone down here. So at the moment, I'm probably still expecting this to go lower down here. Or, if the 6-month confirms without getting there first, maybe, we go up and test here and that drops it down into that zone. And then, the very high time frames, I just find, while I look at zones to trade and I'm just trading reactions off the zones on the lower time frames, I'm not really trying to predict whether this is going to have, so there'll be people sitting there kind of going, oh, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to have a 5th Elliott wave up there. Sorry, this gives a mess on my chart when I look at the high time frames, but, then arguably we're also in a downtrend here. That's a lower high. So, perhaps this is, your structure. Still in this kind of dubious channel I've got drawn, the channel of the lows, So, but this could happen by the time I'm dead. So obviously, I'm not waiting for that. But also, yeah, like I say, I don't try and predict quite so far ahead as far as that goes, because for me, it's just I think it's more lucrative just to trade zones and as and when they're hit, and just trade the small reactions on the lower time frames. So, yeah. So like I say, in April. It wasn't ideal. I think that's the April candle. It was just, I think it was mostly the first week of April. Let's go down to the lower time frames. Yeah. So this first week of April. And then it's actually been not too bad since then. It's got more challenging, I think. So I think the first week of April, things got a bit wrecked. Then the alerts, I think, through most of the end of April and most of May were decent. But then it's become more challenging in the last couple of weeks of May because everything's been super messy. So I guess if I have a look at let's say, Aussie dollar is a good example of something that's very messy, and it looks. The difficulty is, and the reason why my charts are all going to look super messy, and that's kind of why I also wanted to do this, to be able to remove some of the alert like icons that I've got, and so I can see what's going on. But you can see here that I've got, so my blue lines are 1 day or 2 day demands or supplies, the 1 to 2 day zones. The purple is 3, the pink is 4 or 5 day, black is weekly, and brown is monthly. So because we've had so much chop, so if I go and show you like the 3 day going through here, it's just been messy, it's sort of gone up, it's made a 4 day or a 5 day, and then it's gone up again, it's used, and it's been increasingly hard to kind of pick, so which zones, like, is it going to bounce on this zone or is it going to wick down and take out stops? And quite surprisingly, this hasn't wicked down and taken out any stops, which means I think it's coming. Thought it might come with the war actually last week, but so far not. The other challenge so these are the majors. They've kind of, a lot of them look a bit like this, with a bit more. I think Aussie and New Zealand are particularly messy. I think pound and euro are a bit less messy, but still, it's been hard. A lot of my zones, where I've been kind of waiting for, along down here, for example, like, it's not getting hit, and I think that's been the case quite a lot on the euro. And then yeah, and also could run up from here if it wants before dropping. Yeah, so the other challenge is, so you can see here, like, we're in this giant grey zone, so we're in an annual demand on, this is the Aussie futures, so I'm not really sure with the Aussie chart, but just as an example, yeah, so we're in this huge annual demand. We've already had a wick into it, so potentially we could take out that low. We're coming off annual supply here, and now we're coming up and we're testing. So we had a 6-month supply that already got tested. I believe there's a 3-month on this, so yeah, we're coming into kind of a 3-month zone. This might even be 6-month on the actual Aussie dollar chart, but again, the challenge has been, so while the dollar's ploughed through that annual zone, none of the majors have. And I'm not sure, yeah, what's driven. Obviously, the euro is mostly what makes up the dollar, the DXY chart, 57% last I checked, and I assume that changes. But yeah, so I'm a little bit surprised. Might be the weakness in dollar yen that's kind of dragging it down a bit more. But yeah, so what we have, for example, let's go on to the euro. This is still euro futures chart, but it's only now, so in contrast, this was the annual, is it an annual? Yeah, this was the annual supply on euro countering the annual demand on dollar that got run through. But this has only run through, and it's now potentially going to swing fail this high, or maybe just keep going. I don't know. We need to see. Obviously, it has taken out sort of a major low from the year 2000, but I assume there's history before this. But it's only just come through this week, I believe. Put my lines back on so I can see. I don't know, maybe it was a bit sooner, but it's only come all the way through. Okay, so this, I think, let me just, where's that? Everything's moved now as well. So when the contracts change over, all the zones move, and I thought I'd updated them, but maybe it didn't save or something, or maybe I missed that line. But yeah, so that's where we would have wanted the rejection. So it did come up very high. It came up almost to the top of the annual, but didn't go through it. Whereas the dollar, I think did go through it. Anyway, that's been the challenge, that while the Aussie dollar, for example, is making all these, zones, well, monthly now, but, making all these new weekly zones to potentially long off, it's also been coming into or in 2-month, 3-month supply. So then I get a bit nervous, like I'm looking more for the short entry, and we'll see when I get to the Aussie chart, like, you can look for the short entry, but obviously it can take its sweet time happening. The zones are huge. It can go all the way up to the top of here and still respect this 3-month supply. But it does make me nervous then looking for longs here. So I've kind of been fluctuating. In some cases, I have been putting more aggressive entries in, even though they're counter to the trend. And then I put a comment normally saying that. But yeah, so I mean, that's just anyone who uses these alerts has to use their own judgment. So anyway, those have been the challenges anyway. So let's move on to the actual kind of outcomes so we can see. So euro, 12-hour tends to be the better one to look at. So euro, as you can see, like, I've got lots of green crosses below that I should probably delete now, but it's just simply hasn't, from here, this is back in March, before I did the last update, hasn't been coming back to test any zones. So I did get a test for a long entry there, but I think each of these, there I possibly had an entry, a long alert there, but I would have taken it out if it's moved up higher. And again, because we're now in this, you can see the big grey area, we're now in this annual supply. It's challenging. Like, I don't know, is it going to run through it or push higher in it? Like, the dollar has. This might be, yeah, and in fact, sorry, excuse me. So we're now, this is, yeah, so we actually did come through this annual supply here, and now we're quite a lot higher than it. So it was just on the futures chart, we just pipped the edge of it. So this has now come through quite a lot higher. But again, still in an annual supply here. So from a high time frame perspective, it's not that clear. Down to the 6 months. So, again, it might flip a 6-month level there, and then maybe also have to start looking for longs as of the end of June. And then you can see now we're coming up into this 3-month supply here. So again, if we're going to retain this downtrend, I would be potentially looking for shorts up here. Okay, so let's look again at the outcomes. So as you can, you can clearly see from my commentary that I'm not as across this as I have been previously. Like, I don't know exactly, why things have worked or rejected or not. Can't fully remember what the levels were. This black crosses tend to be when I'm looking for a swing failure, or mostly their swing failures on FX. Sometimes when they come with a disclaimer. So for example, a trend line break, I'll make a black cross because obviously you have to see the close below and the retest, etc. All entries you should be waiting for some sort of lower time frame confirmation. But so that one there and the orange dash lines are monthly highs. So it's where I'm looking for potentially for a swing failure of a monthly high. So obviously in this case it just ran straight through it. This was also right in starting that in that annual supply, so would have been worth looking there, but obviously that one failed. And then we've had a few decent shorts, before taking it down into there. Then I think here again I was shorting a little more aggressively in the hope we were, that we're going to see this annual play out, but it's now coming up again higher. And we had a 2-week supply here with a 3-week just above, and then as I said, we had that 3-month, much higher time frame zone up there that hasn't quite been tested over to the left. Bit of a gap in there. There's some stops above there. So it can still again go significantly higher in this 3-month zone if it wants to. But again, it's just looking for the reactions on the levels as they hit. So here still was looking for lower highs. Obviously that one's failed, and I think I did put a comment on that saying, we're now at the point that it might just take out the high. So obviously it has done, and it's gone into the 3-week supply. So I was hoping for a pullback here. So again, as you can see, the pullbacks just aren't getting much. So even here, like I had this entry and the wick came down in this zone, but it only came down actually to the annual level, didn't quite come down into the, what's that, a 12-hour or daily demand that I wanted below. This one, I think, yeah, again, I had that last week. This was a weekly demand in there, that black line. And again, these are the few wicks, if you can just about see them here. Hide the stuff, but yeah, if you see there's a couple of wicks here, they just didn't quite hit my alert or the level. And again, they did actually hit on the Euro futures chart, and again, that's why I look at the Euro futures chart, because it's the confluence of the two. But yeah, and then I think so there's still possibility of a wick there, so then I've just gone again a bit more aggressive, but then saying I still don't love the fact there's equal lows down here, so I could well plow through this, particularly with FOMC on Wednesday. So I guess we'll see. But yeah, so I keep crawling the long alerts up, but they're just not getting hit. And maybe and that's when I need to be more across things. If I'm more across things, I can start putting alerts on 4-hour, 8-hour, 12-hour demand. But for the most part, I do some 8-hour and 12-hour. But for the most part, I'm putting them on daily or higher time frames, and then that's why they may, if there's a lot of momentum, they may not get hit. So that's Euro, like all up, it's not too bad. Oops, by mistake. Yeah, there's one, but even here, gave a low time frame, but again, this would have been a stop out because it didn't come back down. Even if you'd scalp that from there down into demand and come to demand, this one would have been a decent trade. And then that one obviously would have been stopped out in favor of the high. But again, potentially didn't even give an entry there, like when we're looking at the 12-hour chart, so I'd have to see. But yes, I'm interested at the moment on this, whether it's going to give a double top here, whether we're going to get a wick up into 3-month supply and a rejection a little bit higher. And then, at some point, obviously this thing's going to reverse, and then I won't, I've got all these green crosses in here for possible zones, but once it does start looking like it's going to do a bigger reversal, then I'll go even higher time frame for looking for possible longs, and also not, this zone is now not the better zone, given it's in the middle of price action. Like, it's preferable for a wave to then retrace much nearer to the start of the impulse. But again, now, it doesn't have to, similar to here. Always held in the middle, so we'll see. But with the coming off annual supply, it's a bit more challenging. And then particularly if, so what I'd like to see on this actually is if this gets to the 3-month supply here, is I would like to see the dollar chart get to the yearly demand below that hasn't been tested. So keep an eye out for that. So that's euro, then pound. I'll try to be a bit quicker now because it's just, yeah, it's this similar, as I said, outcomes for all the charts. And again, this is another one that hasn't hit any of my long entries. I think I tried one in there. See, there's a green cross there. So that was the start of April when we got a bit wrecked by things just running straight through. I think this had made, it might even have had a monthly demand in there. I know Aussie had a monthly demand and went straight through, but then came straight back above. So it was just, but I again did get the flip. So you can see the green cross and the red cross. So if a zone gets broken and I am watching and it does make a new supply. So in this case, I kind of thought, yeah, worth shorting. I think that might have been an 8-hour in there. No, actually, I don't know what zone that was, but obviously I had an aggressive short there to get the last move down. But then obviously we've got this bigger bounce, so then looking for a lower high in here, we failed. And then the pound's been particularly strong, so it has been, again, I can't remember what these zones are, it might be some dailies and things over here that I was looking for. Swing fail there, so this one went a little bit higher, but did give it a trade out of it. So the shorts on this haven't been too bad, except for, in fact, no, not even except for, so all of these I've actually given at least scalps down to the next zones. I was going to say except for this one, but in fact, this one, can't even see really. This one did even, but it was just a very low time frame reaction. Here did actually give, I think that's it. Just check. Yeah. So it did actually give, a few hours and a decent move off that alert. But yeah, again, you would have had to been watching that low time frame to get that trade. And the pound is another one. Obviously, it just keeps pushing. There's lots of, we're in a very high time frame zone, but there's lots of zones inside. There's trend line stops, so who knows if it's going to run all the way up there. I think I stopped putting short entries on this because it's just become too unclear now. Occasionally I'll go back and look and sort of think, so maybe this 2-month, but it's already been tested. So I don't love if zones have already been tested, and this has only been tested on the immediate candle after, so it could still hold. But yeah, ideally I prefer them to be completely clean and not have been tested at all, because I think, even if that does reject in that 2-month, it's likely to come higher inside and may take out that, or could take out all the trend line stops, or may take out this wick. So potentially it could have come all the way up to here. Anyway, so we shall see. So again, as I say, so might have, these, if these are holding for another 10 days, then we're potentially going to create new 6-month demand down there, new 3-month demands, etc., etc. So this, I think, has already got a 3-month in there. This will be a 6-month more than likely, so I might put that in now. Some old zones in there that are hiding. Anyway, yeah, so again, you've got to watch to see what new demands are created, if this does hold for the next couple of weeks. We can also get, some fuckery for the end of the quarter, so again, be conscious of that. So I've lost some, yeah, this is a confirmed weekly. I've definitely lost some zones here, but sometimes I haven't refreshed the page. Trading used to be a lot better at this. It would, if I used my laptop downstairs versus my desktop in my office, I'm just refreshing the page, it would just update automatically. But sometimes now, quite often now, I tend to find it doesn't unless you actually actively refresh the page. Even if you restart your computer and reopen Chrome, it seems to, I don't know, I guess the cookies or something, it seems to just still retain the old, yeah, so I can see I've got it in there twice now, so obviously I hadn't refreshed that page. I don't know. I can see I had the blue zone in there twice, but anyway, so yeah, still got a weekly demand on this and still crawling up, possibly going to create a 5-day today. But again, you can see the chop and the mess with all the zones, so that's why I've kind of slowed down a little bit on the alerts, because it's just become quite hard to pick where you might bounce, and I think wicks are going to be becoming increasingly likely to happen. You can see on all of these as well, I've got these sort of rising wedges drawn, or these sort of what could be ending diagonals. So again, just be conscious of that. And yeah, just be conscious of that, because they can then go down and take out all the trend line stops below. So pound Aussie, again, another challenging one that hasn't been too bad, but I think this was coming off, I know I had longs down here, it hit sort of major, I think 6 months demand at the base here, or yearly, 6 months demand at least. That might be an unconfirmed yearly level in there, and then it came off 3 months demand here. So this has been obviously in a very clear uptrend, and still, I guess, in a perfect world, we get a retest back in this monthly. But again, I was still continuing to be aggressively longing because we still had a 3-week demand up here. We did get some short entries, so I think I was looking for a swing fail of this previous level, which I didn't get. It just blasted. So actually, I think it gave something again. Let me go to the 12-hour. Gave something low time frame, but then blasted through it. And then weekly supply and then a monthly inside it. So those two entries would have been decent for higher time frame shorts. And then now back down in actually weekly demand here. So again, bounce a little bit higher inside, then a bounce a bit deeper inside. Then I was thinking maybe we're going to get the short and go and take out these stops. And that's partly, I think, because the pound was starting to look a bit weaker at that point. But again, held and went a bit higher in the zone. The other challenge I've got here is, again, some of these zones, that could well have been a 3-day supply, which may be this whole thing, in which case this might actually still have worked in inverted commas, if it hasn't taken out the high here. I mean, in this case it actually has, but in some cases, we'll find this, I'll see in some a bit later, where it's done that for ages and then played out. So that alert, in fact, is still valid, if it's still in that zone. But again, that speed has made it harder to trade some of these alerts. Then again, this is still looking relatively strong, so starting to look for long entries. So this was a nice long off, I think 4-day demand in there, or 5-day. Then we made a weekly just by a hair last week, and I was a bit skeptical, but I kind of thought, so I didn't alert the top of the weekly, but there was a daily inside it here, so I did alert for that yesterday, and obviously we've come back deeper in the zone there, and now I'm just back to being a little bit indecisive on this again. I'm going to guess it did take out this high here, but I'm wondering if it's going to retrace more of this drop on that. So, and then finally on this layout, we've got Euro Pound. So this, again, it was a difficult one, and Euro Pound can be, but I really enjoy trading. I used to really enjoy trading Euro Pound. So what we had here was a 6-month supply. So again, I was looking very much, I think we already tested it there actually, and then we're coming up, we may even have had an annual in here. So it's got an annual actually from lower, so I think that was the challenge here. So we had an annual supply, then it had the 6 months inside, which was already tested. So if there's anything else. Yeah, there was a possibility of 2-month here, but also it ran through that and then it went back down again. And then obviously now it's started to flip monthly demands. So I think just to give some context when I look at the alerts, I think this is why I was aggressively shorting here, was the difficulty again back in that first week of April, that we have a 2-month supply, we had a 6-month supply, we had a weekly inside of 6 months, then we have a 3-day inside it all the way at the top, and then even down here, this may have been the yearly or may have been like a monthly level, looking for the lower high then. And Euro Pound again was the challenge at the lows, is that preferably I wanted it down here. So I think I'd stopped longing really at the start of the year because I really didn't like where the low was. However, it did then, obviously it flipped back this monthly demand, and I think I wasn't I think I was looking still for longs down here, and again, it didn't come back and give me a long entry before the big pump. And then since then, it's created, so it's got a 2-month kind of offset level here, which has come deeper inside. And then, as I say, we had the monthly demand down here and may well make a new monthly demand sitting on top. But again, it just took its time reversing on this. So, and again, we've got that on a few others like $CAD, for example. It's just a question of how deep it's going to come in the zone. You normally expect the immediate reaction off the top. Ideally, that at least gives you a scalp up to the next supply. In this case, didn't get very far before coming back down deeper into a 3-week zone, which I would have had alerted. So again, decent entries on the higher time frame, but less good, or been harder to trade on the lower time frame for the long side there. And then similarly here, trying to get some scalps long in there. I think that obviously would have come probably, there would have been a daily demand. It's come very deep inside it, but did hold. And then a nice short entry for before the drop here. So what I'm kind of looking for is, when these zones hit, I'm then looking for, can I get the continuation entries? And it's very variable. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier. Sometimes I'll look for continuation entries and it goes back and makes a new high or low. But and then other times like this, for example, it doesn't, here it came back, I didn't have a continuation entry there, I had one lower, so that's held, that's great, but then it hasn't come back for a re-entry here. On the time frames I'm looking at, obviously, if you've been looking lower time frame, again here I had a 12-hour demand down there, obviously that hasn't been tested, then it hasn't tested this weekly here, and it's just kept going. And then this finally this 5-day one I did, this is run through, I did disclaimer it saying, we could go for the stops over that trend line. And interestingly, I actually had this tiny trend line here, which I referenced in this alert saying, well, maybe we take the stops over this trend line. And in fact, this kind of came up to that exact level on this wick from the other day or from last week. Anyway, so all up not too bad on the pound euro layout, I don't think. Like I say, early April was the challenge, and then more recently some of the chop has kind of wrecked, and I've been probably a bit guilty of just wanting to have some alerts in there. So I've probably been sort of slightly more aggressive than I should have been when the zones haven't been either clean or strong. Because I do tend to try and I tend to stick to higher time frames, and I don't really mind if they're strong or weak so long as they're higher time frame. But I tend not to put I need to refresh this page as well. I tend not to put what happened there? I tend not to put I was going to say like weak demands and weak supplies if they're on the 8 or 12 hour, because I think they just need to be monitored a lot more. So moving on anyway to the Aussie layout. So this is Aussie US. As I said before, we had this sort of just slow grind up and this trend line, if you can see amongst all my colors here. At some point, are we going to come and take out that trend line? And obviously inevitably then we're going to blast through all my entries. So Aussie was a challenge, obviously. Start of April, I think it had made a monthly demand here, so I did get a very nice short there, but then it had made a monthly demand, which just threw the whole thing off. Actually, that was the monthly, and I think also had a weekly in here, so I had a couple of alerts there which just got blasted. And then it went down and gave actually a very nice swing fail of this lower high time frame swing fail of the prior, not letting me scroll all the way back, but of prior low here into 12-hour demand at the base there. So that was pretty nice. And again, and these, this is a learning for me actually, these ones tend to catch me out. So this, when we have had this accumulation, manipulation, I need to stop putting the sort of retest entry in there because it's such a clear manipulation. They pretty much always fail, and even like I say, don't even give it. I think the hope I always have is that we're going to get a rejection off here supply, and then it's going to give me a nice long entry, but I think that actually rarely happens either direction. And we could say the same actually on reverse in the if you look at the pound Aussie charts, it's like gone up like that, and it's seemingly it's probably not going to, or it's not at the moment looking like it's going to give a retest of that zone similar to here. So yeah, here again, I have been short biased since then because of monthly. So here's a 3-month zone, there's a 2-month zone, there's a 3-month zone. It was very messy and choppy. Let's go to the monthly chart so you can see. So yeah, just all these kind of different levels depending on which time frame you look at. Like it's coming into a 3-month now, it had a 3-month there. Not sure what the 6-month looks like. 6 months is still quite a lot higher actually, so maybe it's just going to go up for the cleanest zone. I'm not sure, and I think that might be up to my next. I've got a little alert in here for this weekly supply, and then my next sort of critical alert will be up here on the 6 months, similar to the euro. So again, not too bad with short entries. I think 1 or 2, so decent there. Here it gave a little scalp and then went a bit higher, but again this would have been a monthly zone, so that would be fine. Long entry here, but again went a bit deeper, but I think also still held the zone here. And then another kind of short scalp, and I think this one failed because at this point I was thinking, come on, fall off a cliff. And then yeah, it just has ground higher again. And yeah, again, so I have had a couple of long entries. I think I've been less putting long entries on this. I think I've had this one here for a while, but just here it was just too messy, and I really thought again we'd get that wick down, taking out stops. But yeah, just still, we're still getting this slow grind up. So you can see for the last couple of weeks I haven't had anything in there at all, just because I've just wanted this to do something. I was sticking to, yeah, Aussie CAD was a bit nicer, a bit more wider space, so it's still a bit choppy through here. But again, so similar scenario here at the start of April, I was looking for a swing fail of those lows there, didn't get it. Then looking for bounce potentially on this, I think that must have been that 2 month demand there, and then wick taking out the lows. There's some lows over there actually. I don't know whether, I guess I did alert that. That might be like a monthly low or something like that. While it looks choppy here, maybe it's cleaner on a higher time frame. And again, has like run straight back up. This hasn't broken structure. So even in contrast, like I said with Aussie US, whereas I was looking for shorts here on Aussie US, the equivalent, and it's gone up. It just did a little bit, and it's gone up through it. In this case, it has given a reaction. So again, it's hard. So this also, similar to Aussie US, has got 2 month supply, 6 month supply, various zones going on in here. So I have been short bias, but again, very high time frame short bias. So that's taking its time, potentially playing out where I want it to play out. So again, it's a couple of decent shorts in there to give some scalps, but then went and wicked and took out those highs there, I think, or came very, very close. Maybe didn't quite take it out, but came very close to that. Then I was looking for a long off this 5 day, which again, essentially it's still holding even now, 2 weeks later. But I haven't re-alerted because again, the monthly supply, so my bias is still preferably down, even though it's taking its sweet time about it. So I had an alert. So this is another example of, I think I had an alert here for 3 day supply or daily supply. So again, it's gone all the way up to the top, but hasn't quite taken it out. So essentially this short is still a valid short, but again, not easily tradable unless you're really like monitoring the charts or just trading a very high time frame with your entry here and your stop above here, and you're just still holding on to it. I don't think that's many people that I'm following. This then also did make a weekly supply at the start of last week. Sorry, the start of this week. Still in demand, so it's not the best one, but I thought it was worth just seeing if we were going to get that instant reaction off the level, and we didn't. We came higher, and I did again put in the alert. There was a 12-hour supply here and an 8-hour, and in fact a daily as well in there, so that it could run higher inside. And obviously that's now hit this alert, given a bit of a reaction there. But so again, not too bad on this, but been just a bit harder to trade because it's been pushing, it's given the initial reactions, but then giving us a second push in many cases. And then finally, Euro Aussie. Not sure about this. Can't remember now. This was a bit wider. I think I preferred this. I preferred this to Euro New Zealand anyway. But again, you can see there's way fewer entries on this. I think just I guess over here there was just nothing. Let's look at the history a little bit. Oh yeah, we're retracing this COVID pump and dump. And again, it's had a really decent move off here, and I did have a lot of lows, and I was a lot of longs, and I was very long biased down here because of 3 month demand, 6 month demand, etc. And again, once it's taken off, hasn't come back to test. So this, again, I was looking for a swing fail of this high. I think if it came back up there, I'm not really sure why. With hindsight, I could, I'm like, what even is that? I don't know what I was thinking there. Maybe there was something to the left that I've now deleted. I'm not sure. And then we came obviously right up into this daily supply up here and really high inside it. And we've just got wick to fill potentially above if we keep going. So then this obviously says holding weekly demand. So I had an alert here for daily weekly demand for another long re-entry there. I think I was going to I think I had this re-alerted in case it came down to take out that wick because I'm getting used to that second hit. But obviously in this case, I decided not to. So I put a more aggressive entry in here for 12-hour demand. I think it was a daily by the time I'd set it. And again, push there, and now it's got a new weekly here. Again, it's a bit perilously close to 5 day supply, but because we have the trend line stops above, I thought it was worth being maybe a little bit more aggressive on this. And again, nice short re-entry on that for the drop as well. So that's pretty decent. And then yeah, if this continues to run, so I'm just looking at distance on this now, monthly demand down here, monthly supply up there. and then anything, if it develops new things in the interim, I'll have to add to it. So again, all up on Aussie pairs, not too bad. I'd say, there's probably what, one or two on each that are that failed or didn't go very far. And then, yeah, I guess probably then at least 50%, have only really given scalps, mainly just because the price action has been like that. But since that's the way I trade, if I had been trading these, I'd be quite fine with that. But I guess if you're a higher time frame investor type person, this would have been a challenging few months for you. On to New Zealand pairs. I'll do New Zealand US dollar, Euro New Zealand, and then dollar Swiss franc. I don't chart any of the other Swiss franc pairs, so I'll do the New Zealand pairs first. It's going to be not dissimilar to Aussie. So again, back at the start of April, it made a monthly demand, which I had alerted. I think I had an aggressive alert for probably a weekly or a daily up there. Didn't get very far. And I think also like Aussie, I guess this probably had obviously wicked into my green line there anyway. But I'm not sure if I was looking for shorts. I can't remember, to be honest. But it came down and inside the monthly, took out the monthly for a swing fail here. So again, finally a nice long entry, but it obliterated a couple of others in the process. Similar to Aussie, again, just blasted straight back through here. Like again, that accumulation, manipulation, and the expansion was strong for New Zealand. So yeah, a few kind of obliterated entries at the start of April. And then similarly here. And I think again, like Aussie, this had 2 month supply, 3 month supply, monthly supply, various zones in there. So, they would have had this alert go for 3 month supply, I think, up there. But obviously it's pushed and it's still pushing higher inside. So, and again, tried for another short re-entry in the hope that this was the start of the drop, but it went higher. In fact, I had an alert here, so I kind of left the cross there, but I had an alert for possible swing failure of that high, but obviously it did make a lower high at that point, so I missed it. And then did also give a swing failure here, but by then has made a new demand, so I then had obviously a long entry here, a decent long entry for the next move up. And again, like all the other majors, it's got the challenge now that, where's it going to reject? If it rejects, I think here I was kind of looking, not sure why, there's some more aggressively shorting in here, and it gets choppier even higher. It's a 6 month level up there and a weekly inside a 6 month, historical 6 month might have already been tested. But again, you can see on this, like similar to Aussie, it's got all the trend line stops below. In fact, I'm not sure why I don't have the line on this, maybe I deleted it. These kind of rising wedges. I'm not sure if they're gonna exactly to draw that, but yeah, at some point I expect these to fall off the zone, but whether it's going to do a manipulation pump first, I'm not sure. I was kind of looking back at past price action to see, but there's not very many structures that look similar to this, really. I guess maybe a little bit this one. But yeah, they can get a pump, even here, for example, that grind up and then a pump before the drop. So I guess we'll see. But again, so yeah, the later part of May, decent on New Zealand, not so good at the start, except for that long entry on the swing failure of the low there. But yeah, sort of improved now. We've got the volatility. We've lessened the volatility, and this is just a bit cleaner than the Aussie dollar. This one has been. Then Euro New Zealand. Again, I think a bit similar to Euro Aussie here. Again, looking for a lower high here, didn't get it, ran straight through there. I've got a feeling there was something over here to look for the lower high on that as well, and also for a possibility of a move down here into the monthly demand. This has got a 3-week demand in here, so again, I was again looking for long entries. I think this is very similar to Euro Aussie actually, but it's come down deeper inside. Then I was thinking, okay, well maybe we're going to short this, maybe it's going to come down to here before going up to take out the stops, but obviously not. And this is where it got more difficult. I think these ones weren't too bad. I think EURCAD is one of the worst ones for having the chop and me having kind of got caught up in it. So here, yeah, I think I had an alert here for a daily supply or something like that, and obviously it's run straight back up through that into this 5-day, but now a decent move down, new weekly demand here. It's got this big green streak here, so it's possible it retraces to the start here, but if it's feeling aggressive and does want to go and take out more of these stops, then maybe we get a bounce sooner. or on the 2-day just inside there. So again, all up, not too bad on that, for at least giving scalps, even if not the bigger moves. Dollar Swiss franc. Again, so this I got caught up in this as well on looking for longs on this when the dollar hit the annual zone, I think. So, and I think these also did lower time frame, did give, that would have been the original one, then came a bit deeper, and then did give a like a higher low for a scalp up there. And then was looking for swing failures, I think taking out stops here or here, but no, it just announced that April move. I think actually the first one, by the looks of it, it did give a decent move up, but then the second one got knocked down. But then again, overall, not too bad. You know, those again, like I say, gave scalps, but not and didn't go very far. But these ones have been better. So a couple of longs there and a long, you know, that came on 12-hour demand on the end of last week. Long in here didn't give really much before coming down. At least came down deeper in the zone before. And again, just caught up a little bit in the chop towards the end of May. Nice short there. This short, again, I can't remember what that was, if that was a weekly supply short, and whether, you know, this is arguably still, you know, within that entry zone. I'm not sure. And then similarly here again, trying to get, I was looking for a push there to come up into this new supply up here, but never got that. And I know this one I was a little bit, I've kind of been tossing up, you know, deleting these entries or not. I might do so if FOMC happens, but you know, again, it's kind of almost like a smaller version and the reverse of what we saw on Aussie and New Zealand, you know, where we've had the accumulation, we've got the manipulation, and maybe the expansion is just going to run straight through this. So I think I put that on the alert, you know, 3-day supply here, and there's a weekly that starts just inside that. But if it starts to get up here, like I'd want to see at least the scalp off that level pretty quickly, because if it starts going higher inside, then it's more than likely going to take all the stops here, and then possibly, you know, even just take it all out. This, you know, in the bigger picture, maybe this is a giant double bottom. But I'm still like a little bit uncertain as to whether the dollar's going to go lower into that annual demand that I talked about at the beginning of the video. Anyway, not too bad on dollar Swiss franc either. Moving on to, so again, I think the yen pairs, no, we'll go through them, but I feel like the yen pairs have been less good. But again, I think that's, I'm thinking that for more recently, it's been challenging. So the real difficulty on all the yen pairs is, so it's going back in the history of this. Obviously, we had this massive pump. Then we had the carry trade unwind, which dumped them horrifically. Then we had a bounce, and again, they were quite mixed. So I think dollar yen had quite an aggressive bounce, and it did come back up to the top, or near to the top of the drop. I think Aussie euro, I think maybe pound yen also came up quite high, but I think Aussie and euro yen maybe just sort of rejected somewhere here, and I would have preferred them higher, I've got a feeling. And they might, or at least euro yen may be heading, I think it might already have got there actually, I'll have a look in a sec. But the challenge here has been also is that, so while we had this massive drop and we did have some significant highs hit up here, that they all came back into 6-month demand. In some cases, I think maybe we got a wick through on Aussie yen. I'm not sure, wick through some demand, but they were all in fairly major demands down here. So these tests are still, you know, again, are we just going to hold this as a massive range? But then in contrast, they also, and I know euro yen has now gone through it, but they've also created these monthly. So I think in this case of dollar yen, it's got a monthly supply above. But I think euro yen, pound yen, Aussie yen had 2-month supply. And I think Aussie yen got a really good reaction off it, but that was in a different structure a while ago. But then euro yen has just been pushing slowly into it, and it's kind of been reacting. But again, so my bias on euro yen's been down, but it hasn't really been doing it. It's been giving scalps, but then that's about it. And then it keeps picking up new demand. So that's again has been the challenge. So anyway, let's go back to the specifics of this. So similar to start of April, I think this again, you know, did give some decent scalps up to supply, but didn't get any higher. Then I think at this point, yeah, it was just too many hits on that zone here. So I didn't want to look for longs, like immediate longs, but then again, 2 decent retest longs. So this has actually been pretty good. Short early, a little bit early there, but gave a scalp, and then a decent short off the top here. Then again, this, I think I was just being too aggressive. I do think also, again, this potentially is a 3-day supply alert or something. So I think, but you know, I think it obviously has gone up a lot inside it. And the same with this one, I think. Again, looking for a 3-day supply alert. Actually, this is a 3-day supply alert, but again, has gone up a lot higher before coming back down deeper. And again, now we're just kind of in a very mixed spot. We're like, and you can see the mess that I've got. We're still under this 2-week supply. It made a new 2-week supply. I think that might have been that entry. And then obviously it went higher inside. So again, may still be like arguably valid. And then I think here we made a 4-day demand. So then I was looking for a long in there. We wicked down low in this zone, but again, pushed up again. So again, there's the challenge of like, which way are we going to go? 6 months demand here, coming off monthly supply there, coming off the 3-week, even the 3-week supply is like, are we just doing this before another drop? And yeah, challenging my bias quite a lot on this, but overall, like really not too bad on this, particularly in that sort of late April, early May time. And then yeah, a couple of just coming a little bit poorer towards the end of May. At least I've acknowledged and recognised that now, so I've stopped putting those entries in quite so much. Euro yen, so yeah, now I've finally deleted the big brown zone because it has gone all the way through it. Yeah, and I think, not sure what these alerts were, to be honest. Maybe we'd hit it at this point in time. The monthly supply, I think we had hit, let's have a look, 2-month, yeah, so I think you can see take my drawings off, there's the 2-month zone would have started here. So that would have been those first couple of red entries that I had there. So obviously it had come up inside it. Maybe I had alerts in March that when it hit that 2-month supply, then we're looking for the lower high. So that did give a scalp down and then didn't give another lower high. So we never got the play out, and then it pushed higher. Then I was just looking for a couple of swing failures, taking out these highs, again, decent drop, and another one, I think taking out highs over here, again, decent drop. Did get a long entry on that, but again came deeper inside, so another short there, and then this final short too aggressive. So again, this period of like, yeah, that's the 5th of June, so maybe it's like the start of June, end of May is when I started to get challenged on the bias. And now we pushed up, and I think, and again, I wouldn't have shorted all of these if they were just, again, zones worth looking at. So the start of this drop gave a little tap down, but that's it. But then I think I also did say it could go and take out, actually, was the highs just in here. That was that black cross. So again, did get a decent kind of move down on there, but again, still picking up demand for now going higher. And again, now daily supply here, again, taking out that high possible short, but didn't all. Arguably, I think the alert went and it did drop, but it didn't actually hit the zone. It just took out that high. But again, could have given you like a quick short in there. And now, so yeah, as I said, on dollar yen, so when dollar yen had already come back up in here to test, euro yen obviously rejected lower here, but again, still holding this, what's this, 6-month demand at the base. So still in kind of a macro uptrend here, even if it's messing around and taking its sweet time. So again, something on this, I think I was trying again, looking for new long entries, but again, this mess here has just been hard. And it just doesn't want to come down to test now. It's taken off, unless you wanted to. I mean, again, some clean entries here. If you traded that 12-hour demand or that 12-hour demand, it would have been pretty nice. I haven't been close enough to the price action. And for me, once I've had this much momentum, I kind of, unless I'm actively trading or scalping something, I do kind of prefer for it to come back down a lot deeper before looking for the next wave. Yeah, so and then we're coming up to that 3-week supply, and it's a huge zone here, so it's not necessarily going to drop there. And I think I put that in the alert. It could retrace all of this, significant drop we had here, and then obviously there's a big gap up here as well that hasn't been gaps throughout here. So we just have to look at the reaction as and when that alert goes. So that's euro, yen, pound, yen. Seems I've deleted. I think we are still in 2-month supply here, but I think I've deleted it because it just becomes, the colours become too much. So yeah, you can see that we closed below a weak 2-month supply, but we closed below here. Did have a big wick from a test into that zone and has now pushed higher. I think this also made a new monthly demand in here, and I missed that unfortunately for the long alert because I didn't update them soon enough after the month end. Yeah, so again, pushing higher, but again, still just in a very tight consolidation. And again, actually, this hadn't quite hit the 6-month at the low, but has hit monthly demand in there, monthly and 2-monthly demand, in fact. that hit the, sorry, the wick down here hit the 6 month. So I think, yeah, so the test on this did reach up to that 3 week supply. So this is the area that the euro yen is just approaching. So again, you can see this just did immediately react off it. You know, it had a swing fail of a wick in there. Not sure if Euro's got that, Euro yen's got that or not. So, but again, obviously this could still now go higher into those zones. So it is still in 2 monthly supply at this point, but had made a new monthly demand. So again, so I'm okay with my chart looking more bull biased at this point. So, and from an alerts perspective, again, decent short there, obliterated long here in that early April phase, decent long entry, at least for a scalp there, and then came down deeper into the zone for the retest, decent retest entry. And then, yeah, not bad shorts, first scalps later on. And again, I think, yeah, I believe I've had, yeah, I think, again, this was too much chop in here. I think that's what the problem was. You know, there was a 4 or 5 day there, daily there, but it's gone into it. Then there's sort of monthly, 2 monthly flip level there, 3 day here. So I think I was always waiting for it to just have a decent pullback. I think that's a 5 day zone down there. And in fact, there's a 5 day above now. I think I might have had an alert in there before, which I've now deleted because it's gone too much higher. And that's got such a big wick off the top of this 5 day. But yeah, again, just looking for sort of clean entries. And it's been harder on those mid time frames of the day, 2 day, 3 day. So this one, 5 day, I got a 5 day long alert, and again, the end of last week, 5 day, and maybe it was the daily, and again, wick deep down inside it, but it's given a nice move up there into the next supply. It's now reacting off there. But again, it's just getting very, very tight in here, and also has, I've kind of put the trend line like that, but yeah, again, trend line stops there, you know, so again, are we going to just fall off here and drop back in? You know, or are we still going to play out that big 2 month supply? You know, again, that big 2 month supply versus 6 month demand. So just challenging times. Yeah, I think not much more to say on that. But yeah, pound yen is actually pretty decent there. So I think it's euro yen that's been harder. And then yeah, some of those, yeah, like I say, late May, early June entries, along with the early April entries. And then finally, Aussie yen. So where was that 2 month? Let me try and remember what I was thinking about earlier. I think it might have been all the way up there, actually. Yeah, so it's a long time ago. So I think, yeah, so I did get some nice shorts off that 2 month up here. An immediate reaction again. I wasn't sure if we were going to push up into the zone inside, but it just got a reaction there and then bounced and dropped. Really nice short entry there. And I think this was annoying. I think I feel like that alert might have gone off for there, but it didn't quite take out, or it didn't take out the equal low there. Let me see. Quite in the right place. 86.061. 86.054. So yeah, by a hair, it swing failed here, but I think I was hoping we would get a move down into this daily 2 month demand or into the 3 month, but it just came back up too quickly. I can't remember if the alert went or not. Probably not, because otherwise I wouldn't have put the move the cross. And then again, this one come back up into monthly supply. Let me just look at the monthly chart on this. So in contrast to the other yen pairs, this did break some demand here, but I think again came back. Did it come back into a 6 month at that low? No, so it's actually so it bounced off the 6 month, and then it's come much, much deeper into that 6 month on the second push. But it also, in contrast to the other pairs, you know, it cleanly made a cleaner 2 month supply that it came off. But again, now, you know, it's swing failed that 6 months, so this could just sort of run up now. But it's, yeah, for now, I'm still bear biased while we're still in this monthly supply, but it's starting to look like it wants to push. So let's again see what the alerts are telling me. So yeah, I got that short there, and like I say, I just missed the longs at the bottom. Short here, and then another short. I think I was just shorting based on monthly supply. I'm not sure exactly what that was. It was just something I've moved around, because I think it was just for if we're coming into monthly supply, and it's obviously gone much higher inside the zone there. Then looking for a retest here, and again just wicked I think it did hold. No, it didn't. So again, that just swing failed that zone. So it's been a little bit more challenging. Haven't been putting long entries on this until last week because of the fact that it was coming off monthly supply. Last week I did because we had finally made a weekly demand. So like I say, my bias will remain, with the higher time frame until we make a time frame that's coming close to being comparable. So not like a monthly necessarily, but in this case, this is a 2 week. But I wouldn't try and probably long a daily demand or a 2 day, even 3 day demand coming off a monthly supply for the most part. So anyway, yeah. And then because the Aussie pairs didn't look like they were necessarily going to do that well over the last couple of days, I thought it was worth looking for a short on this because it would have confluence with Aussie CAD hitting those levels that I talked about and Aussie US potentially hitting the next zone above. But in fact, here we've just wicked through. I kind of thought this isn't the best hourly zone here. But again, thought we might get a reaction there, even if it's just kept down into here. This one's pair's got a little bit of volatility here. So but yeah, it's pushing up a little bit higher. But yeah, so I'm a little mixed on the bias on this one as well. Obviously broken that bigger trend line there, wherever that's coming from. Broken that bigger trend line and looking quite inverse head and shoulders-ish here. But yeah, we need to see that break through here to then look for a proper decent retest on this. Still in monthly supply for now, so bias still really down for now. And even down here, again, would have liked to have a test down here, which I haven't got, but it's daily, or daily 2 day, and then 5 day, 4 day, 2 day demands in there. So I'm not sure whether it really would get a bounce here. When you look at this, it just looks messy. So while things look a lot cleaner when you look at the 5 day, for example, it looks nice and clean. But sometimes in those situations when you do, it can still work, but if you do zoom down lower time frames, there's a big gap down here to this 4 hour that hasn't been tested at the bottom. Is this just going to run straight through that zone if it does reject? Anyway, so that's the euro pair. So we're kind of, again, all up actually not as bad as I thought. Like I say, so that early June kind of period was less good, but in fact, I didn't have it on all of them. Yeah, so 1 or 2 in there that would have failed entirely been stopped out, but again, for the most part, they've given some sort of a scalp or something that would at least allow stops to break even. And all the the bigger time frames, probably the bigger time frames has been more of the challenge on this. That if you are an investor and if you're trying to buy or sell yen against one of the other currencies, that's been harder because they have been chopping around a lot and because massive zones are being created on these pairs. And then onto the Canadian dollar pairs. So dollar CAD. So again, following the dollar, this was actually less bad. So it gave a decent bounce up here for the short entry and then just broke that one. Where is the start of April? Yeah, so that is the big April drop. So again, just broke one zone there. Then came down into what I would like, I guess this is a monthly level there, and dwindled down. Would have been hard to trade, but again gave scalps on the lower time frame before move up here. Didn't quite make supply for a short before dropping again. So again, like I've had, I think, monthly demand here, then a 2-month demand here, then we've got appears to be a 3-month in there as well, and this yearly level. So we hit this yearly level finally yesterday. The 3-month might not be. Yeah, again, it's like, it's just this choppy. The difficulty we have, so one of the other things difficulty we have is that we have these zones stacked on top of each other. Is like sometimes you get a bounce off the higher one, but it's lower probability. It's like if you have them stacked like this, it's more probable that it comes through back to the original zone and takes out some lows, but you can get a bounce beforehand. So again, it's the challenge: do you wait and potentially miss, a few weeks of trades, if the bounce was decent and came back up here. And then you can see in contrast to the DXY chart on this, where it's completely run through this sort of 2-year consolidation. Dollar CAD is obviously still holding above because the CAD has been weaker. And the CAD's picking up strength now, but the CAD is also, I looked a couple of days ago, but the CAD is now also coming into annual supply, the CXY chart and the Canadian futures chart. So I think it's still worth considering longs here. So we are on the yearly chart. Obviously, we're just about to tap that yearly level, so I think really worth keeping an eye on this, seeing if it can pick up. This annual demand, maybe we're going to get a significant move off this. So again, I haven't put some more aggressive shorts on this, like there is a weekly supply there. So I have left that alert for a weekly supply, because if we do get a decent move off here, maybe at least we get some consolidation before a next move. There's a 3-week up here, which I've now deleted the alert. I just got missed. Oh, actually, no, I think I wanted a bounce, hopefully, to retest that, but if we didn't get it. But yeah, so my bias is now long on this, but this has actually on the whole been pretty good. There's a couple of, so that long didn't give very much, and this long would have failed, but on the whole, most of the alerts on that have been decent. And then this one, the last one here is weekly, I think weekly demand, but now obviously it's still in that zone. It's come just a bit deeper inside there, and I re-alerted the yearly level. So all up on dollar CAD pretty good, I think. EUROCAD, yeah, so this is the one. So this triangle was just pain. So yeah, I think I had less on this because it was breaking out. It didn't come, around the start of April. I was kind of wanting it to come back down here for a long entry, which it never did. Decent short there, and then pushed higher. And I think also, so we've got 2 months supply here, and I think we've got some annual levels, and they're probably flip levels. Yeah, so we need to see if they close above. But I think I was just sort of waiting, and even the 2 month supply has all these wicks inside it. So I wasn't really trying to do much at the start of April, at the start of this last 2-3 month period on this, because I don't know if it was just going to come and take out these highs. And obviously it hasn't quite, it's come into the monthly supply. I thought I had that 2 monthly alerted actually, so maybe I've lost across, or maybe there was one in March. And then, so the retest here obviously gave a scalp down and then pushed higher. A couple of long entries, and again, I think I was looking for similar to the EUROAUD and Euro New Zealand. It had that first bounce off daily demand before coming deeper into weekly demand below. My computer's frozen again. Oh, I'm with that. Excuse me, having a big yawn there because I'm getting fed up with my computer. Um, my picture's back, but my chart isn't, unfortunately. Good lord. This is just pain. And the problem is now I have to, because this is freezing up, I'm now going to have to go and edit the video, which is another however long pain. Okay, are we back? I don't know how much I lost then. So let's start from the start of EuroCAD. So EuroCAD, I think because we had 2 months supply up here and various highs here, I think I was looking for taking out of a wick. Maybe I had an alert here in March, I'm not sure, for the first hit on the 2 month supply. But since then I've been waiting it out really on this, or I suppose why there's fewer entries on this, at least in the April period, because I think, here I was hoping we get back down here for a long entry, and then I was hoping for either these two levels for the short entries. It then made a 3-week demand, and then I think this giant daily sitting on top of it, so I sort of started looking for a couple of longs there, so then a decent short here. Then it got murky in here, and this again, like my poor judgment. I think those actually, again, potentially would have worked. So I think this was a 3-day supply from here, but again, it just barely, like sometimes it's difficult because sometimes you'll get a tap off the level. Just hide the drawings again. Sometimes you always get a tap off this level and it'll just fall. But in this case, it's wicked up inside it. But again, it's still holding the 3-day. But again, never really got a drop. And then this second one, I feel like might have been a daily. Yeah, so again, big daily supply there. And again, you can just get the tap off it before falling, but it didn't, again, came up. So 2 not great short entries on that, and would have been, pretty hard to trade those. And even if I could say arguably they're still okay, but they're not okay anymore because now it's come up. But yeah, they could have given you scalps, but they just weren't. They weren't really that nice. But again, I shouldn't have been trading probably inside that triangle. Although I guess at that point I wouldn't have known it was a triangle. Um, but yeah, I think I was just trading a little bit too aggressively, particularly also given we have 3-week and 1-week demand below. So now again, we've got a new 2-day demand in here and a weekly at the base, but I'm nervous on this that we're just going to run the stops. So be a little bit careful on those. And yeah, I might rather just wait on these, just to see where we get to. There is a 4-hour up here, which I was considering, but I kind of thought, if we do get a play out of this weekly demand, this could then potentially run further. So yeah, all up, few decent entries, well, 4 decent entries in there and a couple of poor ones, or 5 decent entries, in fact. So even I guess when I think they don't look that good, when I actually go through them, they're really actually not that bad. Yeah, pound, CAD, a couple of entries in here from the end of March as well, actually. So again, some nice shorts up here, going into a decent long on this. So this is obviously something that didn't get obliterated at the start of April. I think the cross pairs are a little bit easier at the start of April. It was the majors were the ones that kind of the dollar really crucified, not surprisingly. Then, another short in here, but again, it's just continued to push. So it's just overarchingly in a monthly supply, but challenging coming from 3 months demand. And it's looking like we're dropping through now. But again, yeah, so this time with this, I was mulling this over. It's difficult. So we've come back, we've tested 3 months demand. We've obviously not managed to make a higher high. But if we made this weekly demand here, or in this case we did, we could run through here before a push up. Or you can say, the argument is this is weak demand because it's unable to make a higher high. So preferably if that made a higher high, then this is a more viable long. Again, was worth watching. It's now also made a weekly supply, so obviously it's probably going to drift down in there. But just not to forget, it's coming off 3 months demand at the lows, so it's still potentially looking for a long there. But then coming off monthly demand at the highs. Sorry, monthly supply at the highs. So yeah, again, those challenges trading both directions. So yeah, again, some decent shorts through here and a couple of decent longs. That long gave a good scalp up to daily supply in there. And then an alert set here for a weekly test if it's given. And then finally on these CAD yen, another one, similar to the yen pairs, that's had the challenge of being in 6 month demand at the highs and then 3 month supply. 6 month demand at the lows and then 3 month supply at the highs. So as you can see, I've kind of been predominantly short bias. I think I was probably too aggressively short bias down here, and then short bias since we hit this. And then some long entries also the long entries worked out all right as well. So they had a wick down in here into this daily zone. I think, yeah, it actually looks to this like this. So I've been sort of basically trading both directions. A couple of shorts here were probably too aggressive. And again, this is one of my flaws, that I can kind of get hung up on, like, this didn't test the level that I wanted, tested down here. Therefore, I want to short this. I want this to continue to giving me a lower high and short it down into there. And that's when I can kind of get flawed because, obviously it doesn't have to test my zone if it doesn't want to. So yeah, that's when I can be a little bit too aggressive on the entries to come to hit my original planned entry, if that makes sense. But yeah, so this has been giving me little scalps off most of the levels and actually fed to a couple of decent moves off the long entries, to 3 decent moves off the long entries. And now back up, we're still in 3 month supply up here. And now it's hit 2 weekly supply inside it. And it's got a 2 month, what's a 2 month zone up there? Well, yeah. So again, could push higher, but looking for that possible short here whilst being conscious we're on 6 months demand. So that's the bigger challenge. So you kind of the yen pairs, I really sort of feel like I just don't want to be trading at the moment because I'm just not sure. Like, I at least want to have a monthly bias that overall I think it's going to do this. I'd like to, while I may not trade that, or it might not give me viable trades until it actually hits a monthly level, it at least helps me kind of think about what weeklies I want to trade and the likelihood of a weekly working if it's in the same direction as that monthly. But if I'm not sure, then it becomes, significantly harder. Okay, then gold and silver. So gold is obviously now making this sort of diagonal thing like all the majors are now. So gold I predominantly kind of left alone to some extent I left alone because it was just annoying me. And like obviously this, unless you're trading this actively, this would be very easy to trade if you're trading lower time frames because you just trade every long on every daily or 12 or 8 hour demand until it breaks. I think I was looking for maybe like I think that's a 5-day zone in there, came down deeper inside, and then looking for a possibility of a short there. I think a lot of people were saying 3,200 they thought it might reject, so and it was worth a try, you know, with a big move up, but obviously it kept going. Then I had a fib projection, which I think is either here or 35, 37, to potentially look for a short, but this wasn't like a real entry. It was more just keep an eye on it when it comes to this sort of area, or 33 or 3,500. So yeah, that was and this, yeah, I won't go into it now, but yeah, it was looking at I have to go to my other chart to see it, but looking at, you know, fib extensions from those previous, like massive fib extensions from the previous waves, back all the way back to, you know, 2013 and before, and looking at what the tops have done. Actually, I've got the 261 in there, and also then looking at the confluence, you know, if this was to fall, where in this crazy uptrend would I expect to bounce? And there's a yearly level in there. Yearly's a long way down now. And I think there's a 3 month in there, and then I think there's a month or something. So I was looking at where the 61 fib would be. So there was some decent confluence for around this area. And obviously we have got, you know, we took a bit of a wick through it, but we've got a pause certainly in this area, and we're getting a consolidation, if nothing else. Whether it's going to break down is still remains to be seen. So this has still made new weekly demand, might make a 3-week. It's had some scans at lower time frames, so didn't start that well, you know, with an early long and then a failed short, and then like I said, that meme entry. Here I'm not sure what I was doing there. I don't know if there was a 3-day supply in there, but obviously it just ran straight through that. So gold can tend to have that bigger volatility, you know, and then it just breaks supply and demand while it's just distributing and figuring out what it's going to do, either distributing or reaccumulating. So again, another long entry here, failed. Decent long, you know, when you actually wait for it to come out of the range and stop messing around, decent long there. And then once you get the uptrend going, this didn't quite hit my level, but the alert went for a long there on daily demand. Then there's actually 2 in here. If you can see that, because it's kind of hiding behind the candle, but there was a daily demand there and then a 3-day below. So, and I think, yeah, again, I alerted for both, but it came down deeper into the 3-day. And then 12-hour demand here for another long entry. So obviously the shorts have still been like less viable, but it's still giving little scalps. And then, yeah, now it just remains to be seen. We've got this new weekly demand in here. I think it's new weekly, and then there's a 3-day we're just about to hit now. So once if I start to see these major zones flipping, then I'll obviously be more liable to look for proper shorts. So I still have had a couple of shorts in here, but still not very successful. So this is probably what I'm gonna actually, now looking back at it, this is probably the weakest chart, mainly because shorts just on gold are just unreliable unless you're trading the extremes. So yes, we shall see. So I do have an alert there for, I think, that daily demand at the bottom there. So I think I had an alert here on the 8-hour demand there, or the daily below, and it didn't quite hit the daily. So I wondered if we would come back and hit and test that daily. But again, it's just getting a bit messy now, and are we just going to roll off this trend line again? So you can see now, maybe like what I've been commenting on, or what I commented on at the start, you know, are all these things kind of getting ready now for the dollar to have a pump and for everything to roll off the trend lines, particularly when we have FOMC tomorrow. And then finally for FX and commodities, we have silver. So again, the start of April, we had, I think it was a 2-week or weekly demand here, then a 3-month demand. Obviously it came significantly deeper, 3-month with a 1-month inside it. And it actually failed the lows. And I had looked and I had alerted also for the possibility of it taking out those lows. I think it actually holds the overall 3-month. Let's go and look at the higher time frame. Yeah, so I think it's difficult. It depends where so it's arguably it's failed the 3-month because it's become below that red candle. But really, with the structure of this and how this is looking, I would draw that, yeah, to the bottom of this candle. So it's taken that out, and then bounced. So yeah, again, was a bit of a challenge to get in at the lows because of that, the dollar dump. That doesn't make sense. This must be the other way when the dollar pumped afterwards. And I'm confused now. I was like, hold on, but the dollar's dumping there, but this is dumping too. That doesn't make any sense. Maybe I've got it the wrong way around, but anyway, either way, um, the dollar must have pumped. Anyway, throwing myself off. And then yeah, some decent shorts through here. So again, this had big bounce off the 3 month, and I did disclaimer these saying we are coming from 3 months demand, and then obviously it took its time consolidating through here. I think all the time again I was hoping for a wick, either to take out those lows or to come down into this demand, which I didn't get. But then again, similar to gold, I was kind of like, okay, now we've made a 2 week demand. We had a weekly inside it. So again, alerted both those levels, the 2 week here and saying there was a weekly below, and then it went up a bit, came back down for that. So finally got some decent longs on that. Then alerted here for possibility of a swing failure taking out this high. Gave a bit of a reaction, but again, just picked up demand and then really pushed. EURCAD hitting an alert there. And then, yeah, so then really somebody was asking me the other day, this has just got space to kind of go to, the moon now. And I sort of said, well, yes, it has. And like as they said, there was no resistance. I think there is certainly some history before this. I'll probably look at that quickly. Let me find the chart. Yeah. So, this possibly is going to break out of the range. It's tracking up through annual supply here. So I think I said, to then be just slightly wary of this 37 level, just the top of that annual supply, in case it just takes that out and then drops from there. So if you can't be slightly wary about that. But then, yeah, this is an interesting chart because if we do keep running here and get over that orange line and retest that, then that's going to be, your big move. But it's still kind of, that's very high time frame, and we're still in quite a tentative spot at the moment that it could still swing fail here. Or reject somewhere in here because of the fact, it has taken out the high here. It's only retested halfway down, so it could still drop. Maybe not that low, but back into this annual at the start. So yeah, just to watch that high time frame, and obviously that also probably won't be in my lifetime. There is obviously, if we get a rejection now, there is annoying. Excuse me. There is an annual demand here, an annual level there, so it's for it to get all the way back down there, it could take a very long time. Why is it saying January 1966? That must be, sorry, I was thinking, was that 1976? But yeah, it's 2076. Yeah, so that's obviously a very long time away. But yeah, so just watching this for now, obviously it's still in an uptrend. But yeah, just be conscious of that. 37.5 level in case it swing fails there, and then obviously weekly and 2 weekly higher. And again, I'm just kind of, this, you can long on the 12-hour demand. This I think held an 8-hour in here. Maybe it will make a daily today. If you want to do a daily, make a 3-day today. In fact, if you want to take aggressive longs on this for moving up there, my friend was asking me, why I wouldn't long this now, and I'm like, well, because for me it's too high from a scalping. Unless you're scalping this and you're watching the low time frames, like for me, I want this to reject here or something and come back here for a long. And it may not do that, maybe it'll just keep grinding up here, and that's fine, you can trade that, but you need to trade that whilst being on top of the chart and watching all the low time frames, not just by flipping to it once or twice a day like I do. Maybe a little more than that, but still. Yeah, so anyway, that's the commodities, and then finally the indices, which also have been challenging. Why let's leave these till last. So what we do know, if you follow me anyway, is that all the indices, like after these huge drops we had in March, April, they all came back close to, if not in, annual demand. So in this case, you can see on US30, this did slightly front run. So I think my alert went, but it slightly front run that low. And then it was looking, are we going to get these re-entries? So on some of them, I think I got some re-entries. Some of them it did hit the low and would have given a decent entry on the low, and others not. I've been some cases looking for sort of short entries up here, but I've been a bit loath to. Again, sort of similar to everything else, you know, these very, very large zones. So monthly supply in the case of US 30, and I think S&P and quite a few of the others, but not NASDAQ, have got these monthly supplies, but then they're coming off annual demands. So I've been sort of tentatively putting in alerts, but I've been preferred to get them on the long side, and then they haven't been testing. So, and the other issue also is that we left a gap down there, we left a gap in here, we left a gap in here. I think so in this case, actually, this gap has been filled. Oh, okay. This gap has been filled, so I can delete that. But in many cases, I think most of them, particularly S&P and NASDAQ, which obviously we follow more with regard to crypto, they you know, haven't come back to fill these gaps yet. And obviously, and gaps are a hard thing because, you know, they will eventually fill them, but they don't have to fill them on my time frame, or my timeline. So yeah, anyway, yeah, we've having again since May, you know, we've been having this slow grind up here, which has then made it, you know, increasingly hard looking for entries on these, and the similar I think we'll see on some of the other charts a little bit more than on the US 30, you know, with these 3-day, 4-day, 5-day daily demands all kind of chopped around in here. So yeah, on the case of US 30, this also did, you know, very nice short going into the bigger drop, and then yeah, 3-month demand here. In this case, I think it ran all the way through the 3-month, took out the bottom of the 3-month, but didn't quite hit the annual, so a bit more of a challenging one. But again, got the long re-entry there and another long re-entry here. This one, so then we've had another long re-entry go, I think at the end of last week here for this weekly demand. And it's obviously come down, it did a bit of a bounce and it's come down a bit deeper in that. But what we do now have on all the indices finally is they've all created a daily supply. So in the case of this US 30, it hasn't quite tested the daily. In fact, it's a bit of an offset one. It's not the best daily. So I think I set an alert yesterday for 12-hour, 8-hour supply, just to see again, are we going to start getting a fall off these trend lines and taking some of these stops. But as far as, like, you know, again, long re-entries, it's challenging. You know, there's a 2-week there, it could flip that. You know, it's like I said, it's in a weekly demand, so it tested this weekly demand below. So again, my preference is for it to retest here. But again, you know, for those who are concerned about recession, the challenge on this is, you know, is this a high, you know, a significant fall of retest for another bigger drop? Again, the conflicting time frames, you know, can we, if we consider that to have hit annual demand, then, you know, maybe we're just in an uptrend still, and this monthly supply isn't really going to do anything, which is what we see on Aussie 200. I'll get to that. But again, it hasn't quite, Aussie 200 is kind of up here, but it hasn't quite broken the high. But Aussie 200 did hit the annual at the lows, as did NASDAQ. Or is this, you know, this is not going to be strong enough because it hasn't quite hit where it should have hit at the lows, hasn't quite hit this zone, you know. But it's also, it's held, you know, the breakout of this high. So again, it's like an SR flip. Yeah, so again, that's just the challenge on these, that from a higher time frame perspective, and then it's too high time frame again, you know, but are we going to reject this monthly supply, you know, even if we move all the way up to the top for a bigger drop, or are we going to, you know, reject this monthly supply, but because we're coming off annual, we'll just make a higher low, like, you know, here or here, for the next move up. So I guess we shall see. But yeah, not too bad on this on entries, at least, you know, gave scalps. I think all of those entries has worked out okay, except maybe the current one, but it's still in this weekly demand, so we need to see as it didn't get very much. And yeah, so not too bad on that. And then yeah, like I say, so all these are going to be similar sort of structurally. So S&P, again, that same kind of rising wedge triangle thing going on in monthly supply, pushing up higher inside it. So again, I think I had the short for the initial reaction of monthly supply, and it kind of ground up a bit and then dropped, but again, didn't get back to my long entry, has got gaps left here and here, and all the way down there. And then untested 5-day demand. Another one that, yeah, again, went, so I think it's had a monthly demand there and a 2-monthly demand, and it did run through them back in April, and again, just didn't quite hit the yearly level, but did tap off the previous, that green line, which should be higher. You know, the previous high from 2021 tapped off there, but didn't quite hit. So again, you know, are we going to get some sort of, particularly with the war incoming, are we going to get some sort of a drop you know, here that even just taking out those trend line stops before a move up, or are we going to get a bigger drop that's going to come back in and test that zone? So yeah, this was obviously less good on the long entries there because it ran just straight through everything and didn't quite. But again, nice retest entry there. A poor short here, I think, you know, just was already grinding up through this by that stage. And then yeah, now so I've been short bias in here. I think I was just too presumptuous on this. I think I had a couple which you know, I was put this aggressive short entry after that first drop there, but you know, really they just dropped straight back into demand. So that was too aggressive. Then similarly here, now we've come up into weekly supply and a slow grind, so eventually got a reaction off there, but it's just taking its time. And similarly here, you know, the monthly didn't get the immediate reaction, it pushed up before. So in the cases of the shorts, we're still sort of pushing inside zones before giving some sort of a more stronger reaction. Again, still holding demand. Now falling off this trend line, so getting tentative. So I still have, you know, a possible alert for up here, you know, if we fill that last gap and or if we break out of all-time high on this. But yeah, it would have been really nice if we'd had proper moves down into annual demand at the base, because then I'd be more confident that they're going to have the strength to run up. NASDAQ very similar. So NASDAQ at this case at the low, it did hit yearly demand exactly. You know, ran through the 2-month above, big zone there, but did exactly hit the yearly there. This unfortunately didn't come back to, you know, my long entry would have been there on the daily. And again, decent short before and after, before the bounce and then after the bounce. And then again, yes, so similar probably to S&P on the short side. You know, we're now in a 2-week supply. I think again I've hidden the color because we've just run so high up inside it. So again, I'm not sure what that was, daily supply in there, or maybe there was another level a little bit lower. So I thought we could reject. I guess when you've had these big moves up, sometimes they can retrace. So yeah, in that case, that short would have failed, and then yeah, decent reaction off that, a decent retest entry coming into there, and then a decent reaction off this 12 hours. So again, some decent entries on there. Haven't managed to get along on this because of the just of the structure and of the mess. So again, messes of. So I've kind of got. So I think I put on this alert. We're frozen again a little bit. 3-day, 1-week demand becoming very messy, and then feels like buying the top, but we'll see. So yeah, I'm getting very nervous, like looking for longs up here. But yeah, we can only see what happens as and when the zones get tested, and then we'll just see whether, you know, this is coming up into all-time high. Oh yeah, so now up in daily supply on this, hasn't had much of a reaction. I didn't alert these daily supplies because I'm just wary of them. So NASDAQ and S&P both are in that daily supply now, and just sort of thinking about it. S&P got a reaction down to 8-hour demand below, and then as I say on DJI, I thought was probably, if it was going to be weaker, that would have been the weaker one, which is why I went for the short possibility on that. J225. Okay, so again, exactly the same scenario. This came down into a 6-month demand. You know, it went almost to the bottom a bit, and I think it took out the low here, but didn't quite take out the 6-month low. So if you patiently waited for this one to fail there, you would have done all right. And then again, I've just been more short bias on this, although again, I'm mixed. You know, it's holding 6-month demand, maybe 2-month supply up here. I think these were just looking for scalps that, you know, gave a little bit, but not very much. But then this is, you know, where I really was more short bias. But again, still, you know, we do still have this gap that hasn't been filled in here, so I'm unsure if we're going to push higher. But I was hoping at least to get a move down, you know, to retrace some of this up move. But at the moment, again, taking its sweet time, has made a new weekly demand. And yeah, I think I was thinking about putting a log entry on this weekly up here. I think that should be in there up here over the weekend, but then yeah, I decided not to. I thought maybe it would come down and take out some of these lows or something. I don't know why I thought that, but anyway, it's obviously bounced quite well from there. But yeah, still in this 2-month supply. So again, I am short biased. Again, too aggressive here, like thinking that was going to take a drop at least down into here or to fill the gap. So that one's failed. But yeah, the range has been better, and again here similarly, like long entry on there, gave a little bit of a scalp, but then came down and took out the lows. So Yeah, so as you can see, I guess on these, what I'm observing is, we're getting a lot of this, we get that first bounce, gives a little move, and then gives a stop hunt, but then it doesn't give the retest. It's not coming back either here. I mean, maybe it is if I looked at an hourly or something, but on the decent time frames, it's just not coming back for the retest. And I'm seeing that on quite a few of these indices. Anyway, so just watching this, I want to be biased short because of the 2 month supply. Obviously, can push higher inside it. I do have that, potential gap fill, possible long entry there, but it's becoming a little bit risky. And I think again, I would have put on the alert, yeah, coming off 3 months, so 3 month supply. In fact, up here, 3 month and 2 month supply. Delete that one now. Yeah, so just need to see a bit more of that one play out. Russell, same scenario. So Russell is one of the few that actually kind of like really properly broke down. So Russell, we had like, and if you follow me, you'll know we had got great long, swing failures off that high for shorts, and then on this, like I do expect to take out those lows. Unfortunately, we didn't immediately, but I guess from if this follows, I mean they are the indices, so they don't really follow. They follow supply and demand, but they don't follow like the market structure rules. Like it has to be quite a significant break of market structure for to really kind of be properly short bias that we're going to go and take out these lows, for example. It is a strong move up and it is a corrective move that it did just take out the high. So I am uncertain on this, but like if it was kind of crypto, I would certainly think we're going to take out those lows. So I do think it's worth watching for short entries. Frozen again. Looking at my clock on OBS is also frozen as well, so it makes me wonder if I'm actually recording. Hopefully I am. Anyway, so coming up, so now because we've got 2 months supply in here, so what did happen is we did just slightly front run. The alert went, and we just didn't quite take it into. So there's a 2 month level there, and then there's also a monthly inside it. Although there's just a sort of a messy kind of wick. There's a strange candle here, so it's not the cleanest chart to look at. But yeah, so the alert went for potentially coming into 2 months supply here. So again, it's the challenge is similar to the lows. Have we just front run this zone, or is that is that the end? Is that now the top because we came close enough to the alerted zone? So at this point, we're still holding weekly demand, so I did still have a long entry on that in case we get another push, and go up higher in the zone. It's a possibility. I've reset that alert for the high there. So it's just that kind of indecision point, are we going to come down, take out the rest of these trend line stops? Are we going to see a bit more consolidation through here? So I have set, an alert here on the 8 hour supply for the possibility of a lower high. I did actually want to look at the high here because, yeah, I do remember like when we took out all-time high there, or the previous all-time high. Yeah, I remember my similar scenario. We had my alert go here and I was like, have we front run this level? It came back down, but then went back for it. I can't remember what demand was there at that time, but then similar here, it's gone like that level as well. Is this, and this demand is closer possibly than the previous test, but is this now, are we just going to get a test here, drop lower and then go back for that high? Perhaps. You just need to see what plays out, but here start looking for the lower high there, and that's potentially could be a decent trade if that's going to play out that 2 month supply. And then similarly down to the lows. So yeah, we did. We've got all those. Well, I guess it did swing fail these lows, but we've got these sort of 3 lots of equal lows there. We came down very, very deeply in this 3 month demand. So yeah. Yeah, so the bigger picture, because of that massive double top, I would expect to take out those lows. But again, yeah, when that's going to happen is anybody's guess. Not sure what that crosses down up there, so I'll delete that. But again, all up, not too bad on this. Nice short, the long was a bit too aggressive, but held even the larger zone on that. If you had some patience, a little bit of a scalp on some of the shorts, but yeah, the shorts I guess haven't really given very much here, but enough back down to the local demand, and then yeah, its long entry is just sort of thinking about what it's going to do. Euro 50, this is the one that's kind of looking, I guess, more bearish of all of them, but this can still be, so the difficulty again, we've had this big Draw for me. Big up move. This could just sort of be a bull flag for another move up. Again, that's sometimes when I can get burnt when I'm thinking this is just going to drop down here, you know, whereas it's still holding local demand. So we still need to see why I've got a blue line there. Get rid of that. So on Euro 50, came down into a weekly demand and again had the 3 month a little bit lower. And I don't know, yeah, there's an annual, so 3 month and 1 year demand on this were lower. And obviously it's a huge sort of V-shaped recovery bounce. So need to see, you know, is it going to retrace now? Is it going to come back down here? Is it going to make a higher low? Like, yeah, really don't know on this. But again, like I wasn't, so I didn't manage to get the low on this. I think there was a monthly demand in there, but it came all the way through it. And then I was waiting for lower to get the proper low. Also didn't get a retest on that. And then it's really just been pushing up. So yeah, predominantly I got a little scalp for a short there, but waiting for this weekly supply to see what the reaction is. Got a nice re-entry. There's actually been a few re-entries on this that are sort of hiding in the price here. So a nice re-entry there. And then even this one, like while again it's pushed up, this was for a 12-hour supply there, I believe. So while it has pushed up higher, it hasn't actually taken out the 12-hour. But again, not the easiestly tradable, the last one, before the bigger drop down. And then again, you know, had made weekly supply, but again, I just didn't want to be too aggressive with looking for a short run on that weekly supply. So kind of put it higher. And in fact, I think it was higher before and I've actually have moved it down a bit. Can't remember where exactly it was. There's a 2-day supply now. I think I had it on this daily up here. Which maybe I put in the alert now. Freeze again. We're frozen again. Yeah, so I think I thought maybe I was just being a bit too conservative because obviously we don't normally retrace, you know, we don't necessarily retrace the whole drop. Another Chrome is not responding scenario going on. Give me a moment. Anyway, if anyone's watching this, please do let me know, you know, what's useful or not useful about it. Like, I mean, obviously, the results is more for me than for anybody else. Why that isn't changing? Okay. Or for anybody's using them, but it's also for me to kind of learn, you know, what works and what doesn't work, and try and just look more closely at the charts. So you know, it's probably more of a selfish video than anything else. But obviously, I am trying to talk through structures and stuff. So feel free to give me any feedback on what you think and things that you think I'm missing, or yeah. You know, having said that, that might look like a bull flag. I'm now looking back on, you know, all the previous PA that looks kind of similar to this, like here, 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 you know, have actually all resolved down. So that's interesting, but then maybe I'm biased to just what I happen to be seeing on the screen at the moment. I guess there's arguably this one there which resolved into up, but then it wasn't at resistance, it was above resistance at that point. So let me see what this one did. Yeah, so similarly here, it kind of like looked potentially and then wicked up before dropping. I think I was trying to trade that at the time. I think that almost got me. But yeah, anyway, so I guess we'll see what happens on this. You know, the non-US indices tend to be a little bit easier to trade. They're not as inclined to do as aggressive stop hunts and like at the fuckery that you get on the US indices. So that's why I like adding these to the repertoire just so I can see what I think the whole market as a whole is going to be doing, because they, you know, they're broadly all doing the same thing. But you know, you can see here Euro started dropping, Euro 50 started dropping, while all the US indices are still grinding up. I haven't followed them for long enough to know if that's like a lead indicator or if they're just completely like unconfluent. What's the opposite to confluent? Non-confluent. But yeah, just like to keep an eye on things. So that's Euro 50 and then Aussie 50. So again, like I said, Aussie was one of the ones that very neatly hit was 3 month demand at the lows, and it came in the annual, so it did hit the annual, the grey there. obviously I was looking for a swing failure at the black. I think I was looking to take out those wicks, and then the alert went for the annual, and then it came deeper into the 3-month inside the annual. So again, that's why we expected that we'd expect this grind, through this monthly supply, and why I've deleted some, monthly supply. It's arguably still in, but I've deleted the color. You can see it's a hair off the all-time high there. But yeah, I've been less inclined to look for shorts on this for that reason. Again, decent short there, but again, didn't test my long entry for a re-entry, unfortunately. So I think I had a short there, when it first hit the monthly, in case it got some sort of a decent reaction, but really only got a couple of days of down. Then this 5-day inside and the 3-day inside have become more like, okay, it's worth looking for shorts now in case this makes a lower high. But again, just keeps grinding. These two entries wouldn't have worked so well. That one's a decent one there. And again, like I hadn't had any, because of being a monthly supply, I was loath to put any aggressive long entries in, but unfortunately, so if you've been trading this on the 3 or 4, 5-day, you've got some really nice entries on this, as you can see, if you've been able to cope with the grind, and it does do this a lot. But I don't know, whenever I seem to sort of get to the point that I'm like, oh, forget it, like similar to now, where I'm like, oh, forget it, okay, I'll try and jump in here, this will happen. So yeah, like don't really count on this entry here, but we'll see. But yeah, 3-day demand there. I think I've alerted that just to see, again, even if it gets the final push, it's just a question again, like, is this going to be a giant double top, or is this going to break out? And so far, none of them are broken out. Let's see what, even the FTSE. So finally, FTSE, I think this wasn't so great off the lows. Oh, no, it was not too bad. So again, 2 months, 3 months demand off the lows here, and the yearly level as well. This is a yearly level as opposed to actual yearly demand. Did run through all this. I can't remember what entry I had there, and obviously looking at the possibility of a swing failure again of those two lows. So it did overrun in that April dump. Similarly, I haven't talked about the gaps as well. Similarly, all of these have gaps on them sort of throughout. Like some of them filled, some of them did. I think Aussie's more inclined to fill for some reason, and also more inclined to not care if it doesn't fill, because Aussie's had a gap up the top here that it took, had this long to fill. So again, so I think this is still in weekly supply, but it's coming right to the top. So again, I've deleted the level. I had an alert here for that weekly supply, but I also did say it's probably going to go and take the trend line stops. But you can see here, like, it does give, worth a tradable reaction off that zone, even though it then subsequently comes back and takes out all the stops. I think that obviously was a more aggressive, just to flip level. I don't know I can't remember what that zone was there. But yeah, so all of them have really given reactions. This one, then I got a nice long off the weekly demand here into another short off supply there. I'm not sure again if there's what that was. Yeah, so an 8-hour supply in here, looking for the short there. Gave a nice reaction back down into weekly demand, and then even this one. Yeah, so that was the original short, then the retest short. Both of those, so they're really decent reactions, but then back down into that weekly demand, which was the original entry. Then there was another one here, this one was a poor one. Again, I was just being too aggressive after that drop, probably looking too low time frame, thinking, again, is it going to now take out all these stops? I've got a bigger triangle trend line on this from, back in April. But then even here, there's kind of probably, there's a trend line more there, which is taken out. So again, just consolidating through the highs here. And I did have an alert go for testing of all-time high, and I've reset that alert because it obviously didn't quite take it out, but on tenterhooks now as to whether these things are going to break out or not. Anyway, so I think that's pretty much everything. So overarching on the indices, not too bad. So again, the April drop in some cases, hit perfectly to lower zones, but most cases went through a zone or two on the way, or at least went very deep in the zone in some cases. But I did talk a lot about this at the time. If you followed any of my crypto streams, for example, like I think crypto streams particularly, and I probably put comments in the channel and the Telegram channel as well. Just saying, these are all coming off either very, very close to or coming off annual demands. So, there is still a fair chance these are going to take out all-time highs. It's just a question of how quickly. So, and that's, so again, I'll reiterate, I guess, that's the challenge with these, that when we do have, NASDAQ, it's kind of just tested that annual demand. So in this case, it's gone straight up, but is it going to go, the you're never quite sure is, are you going to get a reaction like this that's super strong? In this case, didn't come back and test that level, didn't come back and test that level. Or are you going to get, a bounce, some sideways, some messing around, maybe taking out the low and then going up, which I think is kind of I prefer. But the indices can be a law unto themselves, really. So similar to here, for example, like I don't know, this maybe it's just a weekly or a monthly, but it got a bounce, it tested supply, it came back down. It really took some time consolidating before the move back up again. But this time it's a real V-shaped recovery. But then after COVID, we also had a V-shaped recovery, and this just kept going. Here was more of a V-shaped recovery, so this took out the high before the bigger correction. So yeah, you really just don't know. Lots of history on this. And we're in such an uncertain environment at the moment anyway, with the tariffs, with Trump's and any comment of Trump's like kind of sending the markets all over the place, and then now with the Middle East situation. I'm not sure. I haven't been in the market long enough to know whether the Middle East situation is going to help the US indices or hinder them. I suspect there's probably lots of factors. I don't know how to flip all the way up there. I suspect there's probably lots of different factors that it may hinder transport, and then you see same as COVID, that we saw effects on all the airlines. I think Boeing's crashed because of the India incident recently, or plane crash, and so you've got those situations. Then you've got insurance. I think then tends to start doing better. All those, so there's lots of different, and defense obviously. So there's lots of different interactions. But then if we've got oil prices increasing dramatically, then supply chains are affected. So I would have to look back at the start of previous wars. The only thing I've really kind of obviously looked at in the past is the impact on gold of what's going on with the wars, and then obviously as soon as comments that I've made previously, this, what was it, 7th of October. So here, 7th of October. I'm a year out here. That a lot of people were like, this is when Hamas bombed Israel. That was the start of this huge gold run. But at the same time, this hit 6-month demand. So, while that's that candle, while we can say, that things are, obviously the aggressiveness of that move has to be compelled by world events and things like that, but it does still also conform to TA. Yeah, always of interest to look at where zones are when things hit. So yeah, I know that gold obviously has massive runs when the world is, because people go to safe haven when the world is volatile, geopolitical tensions. But also, yeah, when those end, what happens? Sorry about that. Wouldn't turn off. I don't know. I've got a feeling that is my internet provider trying to sell me things because they phone me intermittently. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much it on the results of the indices. FX indices and commodities. So I hope that's somewhat useful when I talk about the structures. And if you don't know what I'm talking about and we haven't followed me long enough, feel free to follow my Telegram, which I post more about crypto, but then all the alerts come from FX. So, all these crosses are all alerts. So, yeah, again, I probably should have said that in the introduction. Maybe I'm going to do an introduction now and cut it into the beginning. I think I will do that actually. These are all alerts that I've set in TradingView and that go into my Telegram channel. So if you join my Telegram channel, then you can watch the alerts. But what you should be doing, anytime an alert goes, is you're kind of judging. You need to have your own judgment of what the market is doing, etc., etc. So but something like this, you want to be looking at the lower time frames. Is this giving you an entry on a lower time frame? In this case, maybe this was too fast. That short was certainly too fast. But you're looking at the lower time frames. These ones, for example, on weekly demand, they're taking, or daily demand, 3-day demand, they're taking their time, so they give you other entries later. I'm not calling or alerting every single entry, but what you're doing is going at the lower time frames and seeing if you're getting a tradable reaction off that major zone. And some, obviously, the zones are different time frames, but all of that's in my Telegram. So please feel free to follow my Telegram. If you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say supply and demand, there are 2 or 3 educational videos in a playlist on my YouTube that you can go and watch. And also, while I concede that, like, because I do half of this for me and half of this for free for useful for other people, I know that when new people start to follow me, they really, really struggle with having no idea what I'm talking about because they're new. And not because it's rocket science, it really isn't, but because if you're new, it's going to take some time. So again, feel free to ask me any questions. Just join my Telegram channels. I've got a crypto channels and I've got FX channels. Feel free to ask any questions you like in there. There's people that can help even if I can't, even if I'm not around. And then you can maybe understand the method. I have studied a lot of TA, a lot of the different methods, and this for me, supply and demand, is by far and away the most reliable. And anything else you know or learn, you can add on to it. But this is by far and away the most reliable method of trading that I've found of all the TA that I've learned. I don't know if that's all the TA in the world, but that's a lot of TA. And a lot of this, so while there are other people who've done supply and demand courses, I haven't done a full course because I don't have the inclination to do so. But I also developed this pretty much all myself just from watching the charts, watching the 1-minute chart. And while it aligns quite well with a lot of what other people have done, I think I draw the zones slightly differently and I think about things very slightly differently. Shouldn't make much of a difference, like you can do anybody's supply and demand video and learn very, very similar information and then at least be able to understand what I'm talking about. But I don't know if many other people think about structure in quite the same way, or weak and strong supply and demand, etc. And certainly I'm probably one of the few people that uses all the time frames. Like I see, but I haven't, even some of the old masters, they say, you should stick to 3 time frames or 4 time frames, and they should be concurrent. So, daily 12-hour, 4-hour, for example, or 4-hour, 1 hour, 30-minute. But for me, yes, that's more tradable on a daily, intraday basis. But the amount of times I've seen people fail trades because they haven't got the higher time frames on their charts. You don't have to trade them, and you just have to know where they are. Because I will see people, so for example, I'll see people going, oh, there's a trend line here, let's short this. And then I'll draw like a squiggle, this is going to fall off. And they might be right, and obviously the price can only go up or down or sideways. However, I wouldn't ever take this trade myself because I know there's a weekly demand here. Or at least, again, if I take this trade, I know what I'm doing, and I know that there's a fair chance it's going to get caught up in here somewhere. Maybe get a bounce, maybe it takes out all-time high, or maybe it just retests. But yeah, probably for the most trades I've seen other people fail are when they're not aware of where the higher time frames are. So yeah, on that note, I'm gonna bow out and I'm gonna record an intro to add to the front of this video. And yeah, I hope you have a good day. Please feel free to ask me any questions and please like and subscribe as well. Ciao.